Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So this is Laura, aka the Sound Sommelier, here with Rich Medina. Rich, what's your earliest memory of hip hop?
Sheesh. My earliest memory of hip hop was
Mm-hmm.
dance contests at the community center.
Okay.
It was always about competition and battling and one-upsmanship or whatever it is. But culturally, it would have to be the dance contest because everybody that was involved with the culture was there.
Nice. So you grew up in Lakewood, New Jersey, in a house full of people who purchased records and who relied heavily on music for entertainment. What are some of the earliest records you remember hearing when you were younger?
Any and everything by Mahalia Jackson, Five Blind Boys, uh, Reverend James Cleveland, every Martin Luther King speech, anything pertaining to gospel that was pressed in that time period. My family was all over that. And having an older sister, you gotta imagine my sister was 18 when I was born.
Right.
So I was absorbing all of that while she was peaking, you know what I mean? Like she was at some of the coolest she ever was in her life when I was a kid. So
Right.
I absorbed all of that too.
Nice. How were you able to book your first paid gig playing a Sadie Hawkins dance when you were just 11 years old?
We were the kids that was always chasing around the older boys that was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister's first husband was a DJ. And they lived with us, most of my childhood. So myself, Mike Nice, Jermaine Ferguson, other cats in my neighborhood that was around my age, we all knew what we were doing
Mm-hmm.
because we were watching the dudes around our way who was the dons at it, you
Right.
know. And I happened to have a full-blown grown-ass man DJ living under the same roof as me. So it was kind of natural.
Okay. So obviously some years later you attended Cornell University, the first person in your family to go to college, and were a member of the men's varsity basketball team. It's not lost on me that you wore the same number as Jordan. Was that just a coincidence?
Absolutely not. I mean, 1988 to 1992, the opportunity to wear number 23,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was just everybody's dream was to be like Mike. There was only one Mike at the time. So everybody wanted that number.
Mm-hmm.
And I got lucky. I got real lucky
That no one else had picked it?
that nobody had picked it.
Mm-hmm.
Coming in as a freshman and being able to get the number of your choice in Division I basketball, that was a big deal.
Right. Was it around this time that you developed your verbal aesthetic and command of spoken word poetry?
Um, that's an interesting question. I think I began to come into my knowledge itself when I got to school, for sure. Um, I had kept a journal, from middle school.
Right.
And all the elder men on both sides of my family are all men of the cloth, all preachers. So
Mm-hmm.
I come from a long line of orators, a long line of people that have vested themselves in, the idea of putting strong beliefs in people's heads that'll hopefully help them have a better day than they were having before they showed up.
Indeed.
So I kind of don't know any better.
Fair. So I read that you gave up a six-figure job working at Abbott Laboratories to turn your longtime love of spinning records into a career. Were there any specific events that followed which confirmed you had made the right decision?
I think every decision that I made after walking away from the Fortune 500 was a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't believe that successful people always make the right decisions. Successful people just make decisions right.
Interesting.
So, if you can accept the idea that your successes rest on the top of your failures, failure is not such a bad option. It's not terminal. It's not the end all be all.
Right.
And I've said it in interviews before, and it's probably a good place to say it. You know, I'm first generation removed from the third civil rights era in the United States. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
My moms, my pops, and all their peoples, you know, they survived Jim Crow.
Right.
You know what I mean? My grandparents survived, you know, emancipation. You know, all the great migrations that came for black folks from there. So, you know, I don't come from no punks.
Right.
So,
Right.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, falling down and getting back up is a major component of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And just about every black church, I can't speak for anything other than that because that's where my experience is. But
Right.
we fall down and we get up, you know, fall down 7 times, get up 8. It's really
Right.
simple mathematics at the end of the day, but that's where you understand, I guess, where some people have a lot of theoretical faith, but a lot of people don't have applicable faith. They don't
Right.
really put themselves into the gauntlet and really see what you're made of, you know, and take that L.
Mm-hmm.
Take that L and dust up, and, you know, get right afterwards.
Yeah, they just like to watch it happen from the sidelines.
I wouldn't even necessarily say it in that tone. I would just say that, you know, everybody's got great theory.
Right.
Application is a mean motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Yeah.
you're not built for application, it's gonna show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no matter what your discipline, no matter what your walk of life, your race, color, creed,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not willing to if you can't take a punch, if you can't take an ass whooping, there's no use in giving one. That's the school I come from.
That's some education right there. After giving up your corporate job, you and Bobito opened Footwork Philadelphia, the first mom and pop store in the U.S. with a Nike contract. Were there many indie hip hop shops in Philly at that time?
Yeah, I mean, Footwork, I mean, first and foremost, having a partnership with a guy like Bobito Garcia, you know, is a marker in my life, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to be taken seriously by a man that's done the things that he's done, even back then, the things that he had already accomplished. As for Philadelphia, yeah, we were following in the fine tradition of a lot of spots. You know, we were following in the tradition of the layup. You know, big up Keith McPhee, big up Robbo. We were following in the tradition of Funkadelphia. You know, big up Sat One and everybody that was involved with that shop. You know, there was an enormous amount of cultural dynamics going on in hip hop in Philadelphia before I got here,
Right.
for sure. So, you know, we were following in tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I was buying mad shit from the layup and mad shit from Sat One in them spot for years. You know, when I first got, for the first 3-4 years that I was in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
that was my marker for what was going on the street versus what was happening in the commercial side of the game.
Right.
So I think that we stepped in the arena at the right place, at the right time, and at the right place. And I think we were the right guys for the job. But we were just continuing a tradition. You know, there was plenty of people that came before us in Philadelphia that repped the culture just as hard.
Got it. So having worked on production for Jill Scott and served as a narrator for King Brit's Adventures in Lo-Fi release, you decided to switch it up in 2005 and drop Connecting the Dots, your debut self-produced record. Were you surprised by the response it received?
Yeah, I was very surprised by the response that my first full-length album received because, I mean, I had a P&D deal at Studio Distribution, which was the distribution house that was forking out oceans of independent rap records and soul records and R&B records and broken beat and all that. Big up to Mike Adasco and O.P. Miller and everybody that was at working at studio, and basically the guys that really got behind, and Dave, of course, everybody at studio really got behind my record in a way that was really surprising to me. Number one, because I've always considered myself a blue collar disc jockey, you know. I never wanted to get booked or get any acclaim because I made impact records. I wanted to get booked because people like the way I play records.
Right.
So production was never really a front burner thing for me until, you know, Jill put me on the hot seat. You know, the birth of my production career was at the behest of a dear friend, Jill Scott. I'd never made a beat in my life prior to that Who Is Jill Scott album. And I ended up landing on a multiple levels platinum album on my first time out the gate. And, you know, I learned some really valuable lessons working on that record in terms of how to take care of yourself business-wise, how to look after your you know, your creative property. But yeah, the impact of my first record was huge on me.
Nice. Yeah, you can't say no to Jill.
No.
You established North America's original Afrobeat party Jumpin' Funk in 2001, which you dedicated to the late Fela Kuti. Did you recognize an immediate response to what you were building in the community?
Absolutely. When we started Jumpin' Funk in 2001, that was after 10 years of me learning how to not scare people out of the club with African records. You know, I was playing records like Gentleman and Shakara and Water No Get Enemy and Alagbon Close at peak time at the Palmer Social Club on a Saturday night in the middle of a disco set, at random in the middle of a break set on a Monday night with Cosmo at the Remedy. And, you know, the initial response was horrible.
Right.
People weren't following, or at least that's how I viewed it. But the real problem was that I was dosing it incorrectly. I was dosing it at the wrong times. I was dosing it at the wrong tempo. I was dosing it in front of the wrong people at the wrong time. It was a whole comedy of errors on my part. But 10 years of that, and I began to slowly but steadily develop a reputation for playing Fela's records and playing anything that was African and funky and aggressive. It just became an MO of mine. And by the time Jumpin' Funk came around, Trevor Schumacher is curating the Black President exhibit at the New Museum. Debbie Seeley, my other partner at the time, was managing Wumi Olaya, who's Victor Olaya's niece. Victor Olaya was a longtime comrade of Fela's, and those stories are storied beyond belief. So I came into a perfect storm. There's a guy that's getting ready to curate the first American museum exhibit based on the life and legacy of Fela Kuti. Another partner of mine who's managing a direct descendant of the estate, basically. And here I am being introduced to them by another dear friend, Brett Cook, who was doing an exhibit at the PPOW gallery at the time. And I happened to be curating that musically. That was a first in that arena of having an art museum exhibit by a particular independent artist scored live. It was through that show that I met Debbie and Trevor, and Brett introduced me as, you want somebody who can back you guys up musically to get this point across about Fela. This is your guy. And that's how that relationship was born.
Yeah, you put your time in.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think I missed the open parties the most. What was it like working alongside QTip during that run at Santos Party House?
Man, working with QTip at Santos was ill. You know, it was just super ill. It was my first time rubbing elbows with that level of power and mass appeal, you know, on a weekly basis. I mean, I have relationships with an ocean of very prominent, important people in the business, but as a disc jockey, to be put in a place like Santos, you know, 5 or 6 years into doing what I was doing at APT, it was like going from, you know, a small church to a big evangelist church. You know what I mean? Just the amount of people, the amount of energy coming at the booth just because of who Tip is and what he's brought to the table for the culture over the years. You know, it was fantastic for me because I was humbled to be taken that seriously, but at the same time, I knew full well that I deserved to be there. So
Right.
I had a chip on my shoulder about making 100% sure that, celebrity aside, I'm gonna leave a stain on this place.
Right.
So it was a really, really good leveling up for me. Really took my perspective on the game to a whole new level, because now I'm dealing with, you know, top 40 level commercial mass appeal by my side week
Right.
in and week out.
Mm-hmm.
And just catching the, you know, it's like it's like being the dude hanging out with the star athlete in your school. You know, he can't talk to all the girls that try to talk to him.
Right.
You're gonna catch that fallout.
Yeah, just by association.
Word. So, you know, on the humble, just by being associated with Tip, I got a lot of traffic that it might have taken them a little bit longer
Mm-hmm.
to figure out who I am if it wasn't for that relationship, and if it wasn't for the way that I presented myself
Precisely.
when I was in that relationship. I didn't present myself like no little brother. I presented myself like I was supposed to be there.
Right. You held your head up. Nice. How soon after did you put together your first Lil Ricky's Rib Shack at APT?
Little Ricky's Rib Shack had been going on at APT for like 5 years before me and Tip started open.
Okay.
That's the thing. What's so fly about it is that Tip was coming to APT and just checking for me. Tip had been checking for me since me and DJ Language was doing fun underneath the Manhattan Bridge prior to APT.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was friends with, you know, it's just the way the industry works. You know, it's just this overlap of groups of people that know each other. So just through the DJ side of the game and the digging side of the game, and the fact that I was putting the work in New York, that I was, you know, remember, I never lived in New York.
Right.
I've put so much work in New York that there's people to this day that think I live there.
I can see that.
So, you know, certain cats like Tip, Bobito, choice few other cats in New York I could go on about, but they recognize the work ethic. They recognize my understanding of the culture. They understand how serious I am about the game, and I put that work in. I got that dirt under my nails. So when it was time for me to have those opportunities, it was humbling, but I wasn't surprised. I bust my ass to get that.
Yeah.
So Little Ricky's was going on for 5 years plus prior to me and Tip even starting the open party. And it came at Tip coming to me and asking me if I was interested in having a partnership with him.
Nice.
You know? So yeah, it was the other way around.
Good to know. So after APT closed in 2010, the party was reimagined as Props at LPR's Gallery Bar. Did this weekly draw the same crowds as the infamous Rib Shack shows?
Nah, it didn't. You know, when APT was over, all of us were left just looking at it like, shit, you know, we've made our livelihoods off of this place for a better part of the last 10 years.
Right.
And I felt like the brand itself, my brand, Little Ricky's, it was its own entity, but it was always married to APT.
Right.
And it was also always married to the fact that I had Acolypse upstairs as a relief valve. You know what I mean? You could come rock with me for a minute, but the minute I might go to a musical territory you might not be as interested in, or you just want up out of that box,
Right.
you go upstairs, and then you got Acolypse bashing your skull in with the illest selection of sweet soul and breaks and hip hop. It was like the perfect complement to what I was doing downstairs. So I told Leps immediately upon APT closing that I want to carry this party on, and I want you to be a part of it. You've been a part of it all this time, and we can change the name. I don't give a fuck. It doesn't have to be Little Ricky's. I want it to be about us. It don't got to be under my name. I'm not that proud. And that's how Props started. And it didn't get the same crowd for hundreds of reasons, hundreds and hundreds of reasons why,
Mm-hmm.
naivety on our part. We thought we were just going to be able to migrate this traffic over to this new place.
I don't blame you.
That wasn't true. We thought that another small room with people that cared about the venue was the way. That wasn't true. As nice as LPR was to us, and as well as we were treated professionally, we struggled. It was humbling to go from blowing the place out every Wednesday night to struggling to get 250 to 300 people over the course of a 5-hour night.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about the craft more than it is about prestige or anything like that. So like I said, man, fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Mm-hmm.
Just stayed in the woodshed and just kept on working and kept on working. And even though the traffic didn't get much better, I think that the bodies that did show up were important people to the club community in New York. Mm-hmm. And because of the caliber of people that was in that room, it wasn't so much the quantity, right. It was the quality of the people, the disposition of the people that was in the room. It still maintained that energy, that fresh energy that we had.
Yeah. And
that too branched off into a bunch of other things for us, It put Leps deeper into the Big Crown bag. It's arguable to say that without Akalep's, Big Crown Records might not be what it is today if it wasn't for him. Right. The APT closing and us having to shift gears and look at other ways to hustle was probably a big component of that. I wouldn't dare speak for him, but I think it helped both of our careers undoubtedly, regardless.
Nice. So that same year, you were selected to compete in the first season of BET's Smart Enough's Master of the Mix. Had you ever considered that you may one day be part of a reality TV show?
Nah, man. I had all the same stigmas of reality TV that everybody has. It's staged, it's fake. These people know each other. All these fake friends don't know each other.
Mm-hmm.
I had all of those stigmas, and I was definitely like, the fuck do I want to do a reality TV show for? What is that going to do for me except potentially dirty up all this hard work that I've done over these years?
Mm-hmm.
But then when I realized who was in the cast and what the show was about, for me, I thought it was going to be more like a Top Chef type of thing, I mean, they're telling me Victor Duplay is on it, DJ Scratch, Jazzy Joyce, Just Blaze is the host, Kid Capri is the main judge. I'm like, all right, this ain't no goofball shit. You know what I mean? This can't be goofy. I know 2/3 of these people I know personally, and they got a lot to lose.
Right.
I might not know everything I need to know about them, but I do know that they ain't no suckers. They're not going to sell out, put themselves on TV, look crazy for no props. We all got enough props to buy the whole planet 10 times over. So I know it can't be that. If I can get in this competition, who knows? Let me just see what I'm made of. Everybody on that list is a black belt. They must think I'm a black belt too. Bet. I'm going to go see what degree I'm at. Am I 3rd degree? Am I 10th degree? Am I even really the black belt that I think I am? That was my approach to going on that TV show.
I like it. During that time, you became an official member of the Rocksteady crew. Do you feel that elevated your position within the culture?
I mean, anytime you get a cosign from a cornerstone organization in the culture, it's definitely a feather in your cap.
Right.
Yeah, becoming a member, an actual card-carrying member of the Rocksteady crew has only done good for me.
Nice. What inspired you to put together your weekly column On the Road with Rich Medina for Complex in 2011?
Man, what inspired me to write that column for Complex was the fact that I wrote a column for the Fader for a better part of 5 or 6 years called Vinyl Archaeology. And big up to Omid Fatimi, big up to Lee Harrison, Damian Bullock, Eddie, everybody over there, Jamal Lane, everybody at that early startup phase of Fader magazine. I wrote that column for Fader for years prior to the Complex opportunity coming up. And when I was writing it for Fader, you know, magazines were still heavy in print.
Right.
So, you know, by the time I was doing the Complex column, everything had began to shift its way towards digital. And that was my first time writing in a digital format. And it was another humbling lesson about mass appeal, because if I hand my article in on Tuesday morning and it goes up on the masthead Tuesday night, and Kanye West breaks a fingernail in his kitchen on Thursday morning, all of that news stacks on top of your news, and you get buried in the nature of how the virtual masthead works. So, you know, in some ways it was like a tree falling in the woods and nobody was there. So nobody heard it happen, so it didn't happen in a way.
I mean, I understand that it's not too much unlike if for print journalism. I remember I was at Billboard when Michael Jackson passed away. So everything that they had planned for that issue had just kind of gotten thrown to the side. And
sure.
The
editing room floor is an interesting place when you've had to sit on it a few times. You know, when you pass through it, it's back to that theory and application thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's not until something that you wrote with all your heart and soul gets scrapped, right, and the person that scraps it doesn't have a personal relationship with you or a relationship to the story or to the whole point of the writing, and it ends up on the floor.
Right.
And, you know, you could sulk and cry and whine all you want, but you're going to have to get up and fight the next day either way.
There you go again.
So it was eye-opening. It was a very valuable lesson for me in my journey as a journalist.
Indeed. That was also the year you were invited to speak at TEDx Philly about how you fell in love with the city and the culture, hip hop culture. How did you find the time to put together such an insightful 16 minutes with only 10 days to do so?
That's really sweet of you.
I just remember seeing that it was only 16 minutes, and when you started at the beginning, essentially, I was like, how is he going to get through this in 16 minutes?
So my TED Talk, I got a call from my homegirl, E Bond. Shouts out to E. She was part of the committee. What up, Scheme? Peace to everybody in the chat. My homegirl, E Bond, gave me a shout, and she was like, yo, Ted is coming to Philly. I was like, yeah, I saw. I'm a huge Ted fan. You know, I watch as many Teds as I possibly can.
Right.
She was like, you want to do one? I was like, what? Like full bug out mode, you know? Holy shit. This is another marker. Get a chance to do a TED Talk. So the theme of it was the city. And I think it was about 8 days notice I had. And I had got my head around how I wanted to talk about Philadelphia as a city and my relationship with it.
Right.
But interesting piece of trivia, I handed in my presentation and I got a call from E and one of the TED directors above her on a three-way. And they were like, listen, this is a really insightful presentation, but you've sourced most of your visual properties from Google. And for our purposes, Google's inaccuracy rate says that we can't use these images.
Right.
That was 32 hours before I'm supposed to go on stage. So I just inhaled the presentation that I had written. I just inhaled it for that whole 32 hours leading up, because I'm like, I can't use the slides that I set to it. I've lost all my visual markers, but I've been standing on stage convincing people to believe what I say for a long time. When I was in the Fortune 500, I was in sales. When I started in the Fortune 500, I started at Procter & Gamble, which for anybody that knows anything about sales and marketing in the corporate world, Procter & Gamble is the Marines when it comes to closing. So again, I've lost so many customers at the closing table. What could I lose? You know, Getting to the
Everything
TEDx
prepared you
stage,
for that.
getting to the TEDx stage and bombing beats never having made it to the TEDx stage,
Indeed.
right? So fuck it. Balls out. Let it hang out. The worst they can do is fucking boo you. And you know how that feels already. You know what I mean? So I just made the decision that I wasn't going to use any visual prompts and that I was going to run through my story with my ability to close.
That's exactly what you did.
Not because I'm the best storyteller or because I think I'm so smart, but because I know how to close.
You know how to get there. Yeah.
I know how to get the person on the other end of the table to commit to something that I want them to commit themselves to. Even if it's only committing 10% of themselves. If I get the yes, I have closed them. So about 3 minutes into the talk, and I got the first true response, like, you know, you say something and however many people it was, let's just say 1,000 people for argument's sake, you know, and 600 of 1,000 people laugh or fall right in pocket with the point, or you can stop a sentence without finishing it and the whole room understands. And that really kind of put a wide base underneath me. I felt very confident at that point that I could dip and dab in and out of the point with, as long as the dipping and dabbing was relevant to the topic, I know how to get through this 15 minutes. And praise God, I got out of there without getting booed.
That's incredible. Newfound appreciation for that one. So not many DJs, at least that I'm aware of, have their name emblazoned on a high quality shoulder bag. Tell me about your partnership with Tucker and Bloom, which resulted in the production of the Rich Medina 45 bag in 2012.
Man, you like fucking Nardwuar with this shit, ain't you?
And I know King Otto's in here, so he'll appreciate it.
Yeah, salute King Otto, salute everybody in the chat. Yeah, my relationship with Tucker and Bloom, it started from afar, actually. I knew who Case Bloom was and what he was doing with the Boom Bap Party and with his other parties here in Philadelphia. I had heard through the grapevine that his pops had a bag company, and, you know, it just organically made me think, all right, well, this guy's pops got a fucking bag company. I wonder if they're doing record bags. And then a couple months later, I see Cosmo Baker with the North-South Messenger bag. And I was like, yo, it's a dope bag. Where'd you get that bag? And he was like, oh, this is from Tucker and Bloom. You know my man Case, right? And I was like, I know him high and by just on some community shit, but I don't really know him. And I bugged the shit out of Cosmo about that bag for months. And then me and Case got in touch, and Case bust me down with a bag. And I rocked it faithfully for months and months and months, on and off of planes and buses and trains, and just beating the hell out the bag. And, you know, the bag stayed true. I'm pretty harsh on record bags with all the touring. And in all my experiences carrying my 7 inches around, I just didn't have anything that I was satisfied with except for this one bag that came out through Gravis. Gravis made a roller bag that had a 7-inch bag in the top of it. That was, as a matter of fact, I got it sitting right up here. It was a collabo with Gravis and Turntable Lab.
Oh, nice.
And Bobito had that bag, and he turned me on to it. I was like, oh shit, there's a 45 bag in the top. And that was the first 7-inch bag that I had that was really to my liking in terms of durability and all of that. And Case presented me with an opportunity to design a bag. Well, I took the opportunity to design a bag. I showed Case some drawings and some ideas that I had about making a signature bag. And he was on board immediately, you know. And luckily for me, I had the opportunity to go through that process, tail to snout, of handing a design idea, get handed a rough, throw some bricks in it, and just throw the bag around and beat it up. And, You know,
Uh-huh.
we took us a year. I think we went through like 7 or 8 demos of that bag
Mm-hmm.
before we finally said, yeah, this is the build and this is the design that we want to live with. Now, how can we streamline that and tighten it up so that it doesn't feel overdone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a year and change later, we came out the gates with the Rich Medina 45 bag.
Very nice. So that same year, you attended your 20th reunion at Cornell, where you were asked to become the first alumnus to join the advisory board, which manages the world's most extensive research archive on hip hop, excuse me, music and culture. What did that invitation mean to you?
You know, to be keep it 100 with you, the invitation from the Cornell Hip Hop collection didn't mean shit to me until I was actually physically inside the archive.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it was there. I have friends and associates who have been involved from the beginning. Shouts to Joe Conzo, Ernie Panicoli, everybody involved, Mr. Bill Adler, Dr. Steve Pond, everybody that was involved in the initial, Johann Kugelberg. I mean, you could go on and on with the names,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew it was serious, but you know, I was in my own world, man. You know, New York was taking me seriously, which is what I always wanted. I was traveling and touring the world. I wasn't really thinking about no research institution type of vocabulary. So when I got called in, you know, the reality of what it really was hadn't sat down on me, even though the collection had been begun back in '06.
Right.
And when I got there, and just the way that Ben Ortiz and Catherine Regan addressed me, it was like they had done all this research on me, and they were really keen on the fact that I was an active, visible member in the community, and that I had reach with certain people who they wanted to be in touch with, particularly Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation.
I had a feeling you could say him. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Cornell wanted Bam to be the first visiting scholar in hip hop at Cornell. And Bam and Yoda and Shaka, God bless the dead, and Shaka Zulu, they were hesitant to sign that paperwork. And you know, a black leader's nervousness about the agenda of white institutions isn't news.
Right.
So I understood it. I understood it as a black man, and I understood it as a Cornell graduate that does not feel colonized.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was the right guy for the job to show Bam and Zulu and Breakbeat Lou and Crazy Legs and some of the other Babito and the other folks that I pushed to the front of the table in that situation. That you know, just because you go to an institution that's predominantly white doesn't mean you're going to come out acting like a sellout.
Right.
So it meant a lot to me, academically, culturally, personally. You know, I found my real knowledge of self at Cornell.
Nice.
You know, I realized who the fuck I am there. And I did it under the tutelage of a bunch of black men at a white institution that didn't take no shit from nobody. So I was already fortified. It was already all of this ancestral power behind me. You know, this gesture that I was doing ain't shit in terms of the nobility of some of the gestures of brothers that started slave revolts, or brothers that stood up during Jim Crow, or sisters that stood up during the civil rights, the pieces of the civil rights era that we're taught. You know, I don't look at what I did there as anywhere near as noble as that, but it's still a marker, and it's still something prominent and important for the culture that, you know, the academic world needs to understand that we're not an elective.
Very much so.
We're curriculum. We're actually the bedrock of all curriculum. What happens to brown people is the bellwether for what happens to the rest of the world. that goes far beyond commercializing and mass marketing a cultural movement. You know,
Right.
we are the original man. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes for all people of color. That's a diasporic statement. It's all rooted in Africa, but some of our brothers and sisters got fine hair like yours. Some
Right.
of our brothers and sisters are as complected as you are. You know, brothers and sisters come in many a form,
Right.
because of the behavior of colonizers. So I felt like it was an important step in making sure that we're viewed as core curriculum. We are not a fucking elective. This ain't wine tasting. You know what I'm saying? This is social studies. This is geographical social dynamics. This is international policy. This is city and regional planning. This is redlining. This is gerrymandering. This is the overseer. This is the officer. This is the landowner and the lessee and all of that, you know? We've represented that vocabulary from the bottom of the bottom. None of this shit was designed for us to survive it.
Right.
All of this shit was designed to use us to fuck up and sweep us off under the rug. But, you know, we are the proverbial rose that grew from concrete. So a lot of motherfuckers died so I could have the opportunity to do some shit like that.
Indeed. So as someone who has advised on the importance of practicing your craft and sharing the importance of learning the history behind the culture, what did it mean to you to return to your alma mater to teach the hip hop music, culture, and race class with Ben Ortiz during the summer of 2017? And I know he was in here earlier. I don't know if he's still in here though.
Wow, salute to Ben, man. Salute to Ben and Catherine. You know, teaching alongside Ben at Cornell, and teaching alongside Dr. Steve Pond, teaching alongside Catherine Regan. It was a really, really, really aggressive boot camp on pedagogy. You know, the method of teaching.
Right.
Having a public speaker and a pretty outspoken guy my whole life, but falling into line and having to parse out information for students in a way that's palatable versus just Tommy gunning data across the plate as a poet. You know, it's two different people.
Indeed.
That was a big, big, big learn for me. How to slow down. Slow down. You're so excited to give up this info that you're running people over with the info.
Yeah.
You know, we got a couple of weeks to get this shit across. You got to slow down. All of that, you know. So then I found myself trying to be more professorial. But then Ben and Catherine are like, nah, fuck that. Don't do that. Do you. You got the data and you're living it. It's experiential teaching. And that was like, that just like exploded my head and put me into a state of mind of believing that, you know, these people that brought me here be not out of nepotism because of some titles or some tags. They brought me here because I know what the fuck I'm talking about.
That knowledge.
It was another leveling up, you know. So it's like all these phases in my life. There was a leveling up in my teens. There was a leveling up in my 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm 51 now, you know.
Oh yeah, happy belated.
Thank you very much. But you know, that level up keeps coming if you want it.
Right.
If you really want to get better and get stronger at what you do, you got to be open to the level up, you know. You'd be finished when they put you in the fucking ground.
Right.
That's when you arrive. When they put your punk ass 6 feet down, that's arrival. And the question is, when you're not there to defend yourself, what kind of debris did you leave behind you? What are people saying about what you've contributed to the space? You know, how much content have you left behind and how many stains have you left behind?
Right.
You know, and to me, it was just an opportunity to have my fingerprint on some content that will go down in history undeniably. It won't be folklore. It'll be dinosaur bones.
Yeah, you continue to give lectures on hip hop history at Cornell, as well as Lincoln University and the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. Why do you feel it's important to educate youth about hip hop culture, especially in this day and age?
It's important to educate youth about all culture. And talking about hip hop culture the way we do is the entryway to retribution for all the revisionist history that we've all had to suffer through prior. Quite frankly, it's the key to unlocking the repair that revisionist history has presented us with. Revisionist history has damaged the psyche of the average everyday person, because the average everyday person still believes that there's more than one race. There's only one fucking race. It's the human race.
I had this conversation with someone earlier today.
Yeah, next to prostitution, that's the biggest trick the white man pulled on anybody. With the idea that there's more than one race and that one race is inferior or superior to the other. But that's a colonialist, capitalist mindset that has permeated the world in an extremely negative way. So teaching hip hop history, teaching the history of race relations across the colonialist landscape is extremely vital. It's paramount to everything that has to do with our collective futures.
Right.
Because if I can't get my point across to a young white man or a young white woman 20 years younger than me, who at some point or another may be a senator or a governor or a DA or an AG or a comptroller or something involved with government, infrastructure, and real decision making that has to do with law and permanence and provenance with regard to what the United States stands for, then I'm contributing to the situation, you know? I think that there's a lot of kind-hearted, good-willed white folks out here that have to go home to a MAGA house every night, and they gotta reboot all of that energy every single day. I don't feel sorry for them, but I don't envy that position, because you're trying, but there's some, you know, it's like a self-inflicted injury. It's not the community that you want to stand up for that's stopping you. It's the people in your own community that don't believe that the community that you want to stand for is worth a damn. That's got to be a hell of a wall to climb, going home every night to that shit. So if I can provide a lens on it that will help that kid cut through that dissonance at home, then that kid's a little bit less dissonant every time he's in front of me. And every time he or she is out in public, they're a little bit less tolerant of the shit that they used to be complicit in. Maybe they don't realize that being quiet, you might as well have the gun too. By not saying nothing,
this year.
you either against it or you with it. You know what I mean? And that's got to be a hard line to toe when the culture that you're born into says that you don't have to lift a finger for no motherfucking body. I can't imagine having to climb out from under that bullshit culturally. But I can't imagine being on the other side of it as one of the people with a pickaxe hacking away at the bullshit. Because even the people that are benefiting from the bullshit know it's bullshit. That's why they lie to you all the time.
Well said. So you also gave a lecture at HipHop in the Netherlands last summer where you expanded on your quote, "Rap music is the waiting room inside the mansion called hip-hop." How would you say international audiences absorb a lesson in hip-hop history differently than those here in the U.S.?
I would say that international audiences absorb hip-hop with an eagerness that is very difficult to describe. If you have always seen pictures of ice cream and heard stories about ice cream, and then you actually get to hold an ice cream cone in your hand, imagine your enthusiasm. Imagine as a 30-year-old European, if you've been watching your European friends do a beautiful job of adopting this culture that comes from a completely different country with regard to utilizing rhythm and syncopation and making the most of what you got when you don't have a lot and all of that. And you find a way to do it so credibly that you make it yours,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still not the article.
Right.
So when someone brings the true article to the table, you know, how does it not change your perspective on things, especially if the article is not presenting you with bullshit? So
Mm-hmm.
my experience as an educator in Europe has been phenomenal, because there's people who are really vested in the idea of how did it really happen? Who
Right.
was there? You know, what train did you take to get to Parkchester or
Mm-hmm.
Bronx River? You know, and you hear people telling these bullshit stories all the time. I was there, and you know, the Bronx was dope and this and that. I'm like, fam, you from Jersey.
Yeah.
Age-wise, you fit in the demographic, but how many buses did you take to get to Bronx River?
Mm-hmm.
And how many
Especially from
blocks did you
Jersey.
walk? And how many wolves did you know in those neighborhoods that walked you through those neighborhoods to get to where you claim to be?
Safely, yeah.
Unpack that for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So you have to unravel a lot of folklore
Mm-hmm.
and get down to the brass timing and dates and chronological things that make sense. And of course, you know, with hip hop, is it Herc or is it Bambaataa? Is it Cash Money? Is it Jazzy Jeff? Is it the
Right.
Funky 4 plus one more? Is it Cold Crush? People are going to go back and forth and opinionate about everything, you know, but chronology don't lie.
Mm-mm.
So going to Europe and being able to break it down, not only from what was the landscape of the Bronx in the 60s and the 70s, but why did that landscape become that way?
Mm-hmm.
You know, before we talk about Bambaataa or Herc or any pioneers, we got to talk about Robert Moses.
Right. Very true. Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for the Cross Bronx Expressway being plowed through the South Bronx the way it was, who's to say the South Bronx that we romanticize when it comes to hip hop, those of us that weren't there,
Mm-hmm.
would have even existed?
Mm-hmm.
At least not at the fever pitch that it was.
So true. Mm-hmm.
So being able to draw that water out of that rock for people, you know, it's an important responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I take it very seriously.
I can tell. Just another reason why you have to teach hip hop culture, to keep those kinds of stories alive. So switching gears a little bit, other than those framed and hanging on your walls, do you have records in your collection of nearly 40,000 that you never touched to preserve their condition and or value?
Absolutely. There are records in my collection that have not been opened, nor will they ever be opened unless they're opened by whatever institution or highest bidder
Mm-hmm.
they end up with.
Nice. So you've been an official Dubspot music school DJ instructor since 2011. Have you been able to take part in their online program since the pandemic hit?
I taught at Dubspot for like 3 years, 4 years. And then from there, I went to teach at Scratch Academy. So I'm not still at Dubspot. I haven't been at Dubspot for years. But when I was there, I first learned from Opie Miller and DJ Kiva and Chris Annabelle at Dubspot. And that really opened my whole game up as a producer. And then I had the opportunity to teach there. And I found myself really frustrated at Dubspot as a teacher because I felt like I was teaching people how to use Serato. I didn't feel like I was teaching people how to DJ.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Scratch Academy, I felt like I was teaching people how to DJ.
Mm-hmm. So the last time I interviewed you was at Donuts Are Forever in 2015, where we spoke about Dilla's influence on you as an artist and what it meant to you to be part of honoring his legacy. You recently rocked a History of J Dilla set on Twitch in October. Do you agree that even though it's been almost 15 years since he passed, his music is still just as relevant today as it was 20 years ago?
Absolutely. It's more pertinent now than it was when he was making it. Right. No question.
When did you and longtime DJ partner Cosmo Baker decide to revive your infamous party, The Remedy, on Twitch for fans to enjoy across the globe?
I asked Kaz to come do The Remedy with me about 3 or 4 months ago, but everybody was still in this phase of this thing ain't gonna last that long, or, you know, maybe I want to bear down on my own thing, you know what I'm saying, and work on my own game. And everybody was going through their ruminations of what they were going to be in this world. How are you going to present yourself in this situation, you know? And I kept asking. I kept asking straight up. And then there came a point where I had Kaz's undivided attention. And I was like, listen, man, forget about titling. Just come do a broadcast with me. Fuck this via satellite shit. You get tested, I get tested. We come in here clean. You don't have to worry about all that excess shit. But get here. Get over here and come DJ in my toolbox.
Nice.
And then I can show you why I wanted you to come do this with me in the first place. And Kaz showed up. And now here we are a couple of episodes in, and it's like we never got off the bike.
Yeah, it's incredible. At this point, I'd be surprised to learn of someone who has not heard of Club Quarantine. What was it like playing a Sunday school set with your brothers, the Originals, last month on IG Live?
Oh, man. Man, DJing with the Originals is like a DJ's wet dream. You know, to be in a room full of silverback gorillas like these guys, and there's no ego, there's no posturing, there's no industry shit, you know. We all actually really, really, really care for each other as human beings beyond the music, you know. It's a 20 and 30-year friendships we're talking about. So to come together the way we have, we came together for a good cause. We came together with some good energy, and here we are 8 years later to the month talking about it. So it's an honor. You know, I consider myself the baby brother of the bunch. You know, I mean, look, Stretch and Bobbito and all of that history. Clark Kent, Jesus Christ, fucking Dindada.
Right.
Everything Jay-Z, everything big, everything, so many major label connections and productions over the years. D-Nice, TR-808, and Tony Touch, you know, Taino Warrior. I've done my shit, you know. I made my noise. I stand strong on mine, you know. Ain't no fucking questioning who I am. But as a true student of the game, you always know the ledge, and you know, never outshine your masters, and you never speak out of line or step out of pocket when you're in the company of greatness. And rocking with those gentlemen, I'm in the company of greatness at all times. I'm in the company of world-class creative talent. And not for nothing, I'm in the company of some world-class human beings. So I can't lose in that situation, you know. So it's a blessing that I got pulled into that group the way I did. And they're going to have to fight me real bad if they want that spot.
And then earlier this week, you and DJ Mike Nice, who you've known since middle school, gave listeners an extra special APT from your APT live stream experience on Twitch, just hours after you finished the set for Fool's Gold Radio Serato sessions. With all of the interviews and virtual DJ sets you've shared and will continue to share with the world, have you experienced burnout at any point?
We don't have the luxury to feel burnout, man. We got first world problems. I know people with real problems. No, we don't have the luxury to feel burnt out. If you're burnt out off of standing in your home and trying to figure out a way to make money, you ain't shit.
So I think my next and last question is kind of more apt to what you just said. Back in May, you posted Time Magazine's cover photo of the Baltimore riots in response to the death of Freddie Gray in 2015. This image brought to light the same photo could have been taken in 1968 after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., but is sadly still relevant in 2020 with the senseless murder of George Floyd and countless others at the hands of police. As someone who has been vocal about the need for change in this country, do you believe it's possible we may see that change in our lifetime?
It would be possible for us to see a change in our lifetime when a combination of young white people who are gaining their power, who are fed up, begin to really stand for what they say they believe in. And when somebody in the electoral college or in the older generations of politics that has their hands on the law has the balls to stand up for what's right, that's when it's going to change.
Yeah.
When white people let it change. Because we've been at the top of our lungs for creeping up on 427 years now. And everybody that's not black, that's woke now, wants a badge for having been awake since they got an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, fish also swim. I'm not gonna pat you on your back for doing what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna pat you on your back for going the extra mile. So I don't need to participate in any kumbaya moments about how many woke people are around me.
Right.
It's the wokest ones that'll let you down the worst at the end of the day, because woke is theoretical. More often than not, it's not applicable. It's theory that's utilized to feel or present yourself like you're part of something. But all of us who are part and parcel of that thing that you're claiming that you're part of, we know whether you've been in the meetings or not. We know whether you've broken a sweat on our behalf or not. And it is only because of our grace that all that bullshitting that's been going on up until now hasn't been called out at a higher level. It's only because of the grace of people of color. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Grace and power.
Well, Rich, I appreciate you so much for taking the time. Is there anything else that you want to add or promote?
I don't know. I'll be online DJing a lot. I do some shows, try to do some varied shows and open up my palette a little bit. We got some talk shows. We got some music talk shows. We got some wellness talk shows. We're doing some house music stuff. We're doing some hip hop stuff. We're doing some digital stuff. We're doing some analog stuff. We're just out here doing the work, man. You know, I don't really do my work necessarily looking for pats on the back. I do my work because it keeps me moving forward.
Right.
And luckily, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that. You know, I don't really read my press clippings more than once.
Right.
You read it once, cut it out, put it in the hero file, and get the fuck back to work. So, you know, nah, I don't want to promote nothing. I think the people that believe in what I do, and I'm extremely thankful for them. We all want more traffic. We all want more bodies. But, you know, the people that show up for me, fill me up. There's plenty of room for more. But yeah, I didn't really take this interview for any egregious self-promotion.
Right.
I would like to let my work stand for itself.
As it does. Well, I hope you have a really good weekend and a nice holiday season.
Thank you. You too. Have a fantastic Christmas if that's your thing.
Yeah. I look forward to more videos with your son.
Oh yeah, that's coming up. That's coming up. We got some things in the bag.
Nice.
We got some. You gotta see some more things from that dude. He's
Can I ask how tall he is now?
Oh, Kamal. Oh man, Kamal is like 5'9".
He's taller than I am.
Yeah, he's long, man, and he isn't even 13 yet. He'll be wearing my shit freshman year in high school, no question.
Amazing.
Luckily for me, he's definitely gonna be bigger than me, so I got about
you
8
think
months.
So?
Yeah, no question. I got about 8 months of him fucking my clothes up before I can get back to my life. So I'm
Uh-huh.
not gonna take that. I'm buying up a lot of extra shit now.
I was gonna say you gotta save him some good shit.
Doubles and triples everywhere. Word.
Tata everywhere.
Absolutely. Pat's stash is disgusting. It's gonna be a problem. We're gonna be box fresh for a hot minute.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, thanks so much again. I'll talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Peace.
Appreciate it. All right.